Let's read on, though, because that's not the end of the story. Here we go. Verse 23. Jesus said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all the prophets have spoken. Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he was going further. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. And then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road? And he opened the scriptures to us." Let's stop right there. You, Cleopas, have just related your story to this stranger. And you've talked from your heart. And you talked about how your hope has been destroyed and deflated. And this stranger comes up and says, slow. My goodness here. Kind of slow-brained here. You're kind of thick today. You're slow of heart, slow to understand. And you're thinking, what? Seriously now? We just saw Jesus die. Are you calling me thick because of that? Thankfully, this stranger continues the conversation. And obviously he knew the scriptures. Because he went from Moses, the books of Moses, all the way through the prophets. And he explained that our idea of what the Messiah was to be was off base. He explained that the Messiah had to suffer and then would achieve glory. He was going to be a conquering king, but not just to kick out the Romans. He was going to make things right between humanity and our God. That's a little different. You had never heard such a seamless story of hope, but only a couple times. After about 3 hours, you and your friend and the stranger, you arrive at Emmaus. And you, obviously, Cleopas, you were kind of hungry because it's hunger time. It's been 3 hours since the last meal. And you say to the stranger, "Please stay. It's late. You can eat with us." And really, you wanted to hear more because he had sparked that hope in you. You're saying, "I got to hear some more." He agrees to stay. He was a little coy at first, but he agreed to stay. Comes and sits down at the table. You begin to talk a little more. But then, he grabs some bread. And he thanks God for it. And he breaks it in half. And he offers it to you. And it was at that time you go, "No, it can't be. No, but it's got to be. Wait, we've seen this before. No, it's Jesus." But how? How did that happen? It's Jesus. He's gone. Where'd he go? He was right here. He's gone. But your hope has been restored. You have seen Jesus again. You know that he's alive. It is this, because Jesus is the one. He is the Messiah. Let's pause there a second. Let me talk a little bit about God moments. Because you, as Cleopas, had a God moment where Jesus just broke into your world and opened up your eyes and your mind to who God is and what he has in store for you. You have just had a God moment. And there's a couple things about God moments. Timing. We don't get to choose the timing of God moments. No, you can't go to www.godmoments.com and order up a God moment. You just can't. God says, I'm going to do this. I'm in charge of this. You notice in your reading that Cleopas and his friend were kept from recognizing Jesus. It wasn't that they didn't recognize him. They were kept from recognizing him. God did this on purpose. It was his timing. Why did it take 3 hours in order for Jesus to reveal who he was? And it only took 30 seconds for Mary to see who he was. It's God's timing. God is in charge of the timing. Another part of it is God decides who gets these God moments. God alone chooses who he is going to break into their world and to open their eyes. Because we all know, unless God opens the eyes of somebody and draws that person to him, they will not come to know Jesus. But Jesus has its incredible ability to open up people's eyes and show them who he is. If you are a believer, you have had a God moment where Jesus has just broken into your world and said, this is who I am, and this is what I have in store for you. Let me give you a couple of examples here. Just this past week, Wednesday, the high school ministry, they got to see the Passion of the Christ at the Mara's house. And we're sitting in the basement watching the movie, and it is a gripping tale. It's very well done. There's a little artistic license once in a while, but it is so gripping. And at the end of the movie, there was silence in that basement. It was clear that God had there. He said, oh, I've got something for you. I've got something for you. And some of the students said, you know what? I have never understood really what Jesus has gone through for me. I understand all of his suffering and the pain for me. I understand that now. Here's another one. The next day, Thursday, sitting in Caribou Coffee and preparing the sermon, because that's just the best place to do that anyways, right? Sitting in Caribou, and all of a sudden, in comes this guy who, at first glance, you're saying, I probably wouldn't hang out with this guy. I'm just stopping right there. And in a coffee shop, all of a sudden you come up with conversations once in a while. You don't know how they start. They just all of a sudden come up. Oh, how you doing? Oh, great. What are you doing? He asked me, what are you doing? So I'm thinking, well, I'll just tell him I'm preparing a sermon. And he goes, wow, yeah. And then he drops his stuff where it was and then comes over to my table. I'm going, oh, boy, this is going to be great. Comes over and says, oh, yeah. And we talk a little bit about Easter and stuff like that. He says, let me tell you something that has changed my life. He says, I call it the it factor. I'm going, wow, I don't know anything about this. The it factor. And then he grabs a marker, and he's going to draw it out for me. I'm saying, this is great. He goes, imagine, this world did not come about just on its own, did it? You've really got to stretch yourself to think that this has really come about all on its own. Right? There is some being, some God who made this happen. And he drew a circle. And he said, and that God came down to earth. And he draws this line. And I said, oh, that's an eye. I get that. Okay, circle, eye. This God came to earth. And then he lived among us. And before he left, he offered forgiveness as far as the east is from the west. And he offered total forgiveness of sins. And he said, that has changed my life. The I and the T, the it factor. That was his God moment. And he couldn't help but tell other people about it. A stranger of myself, I got to tell them.